Welcome to Four Favorites, brought to you by the Quiet on Set podcast. I'm your host, Jürgen Gruff, and today I'm joined by Arturo Zurito from the Intercut podcast and the YouTube channel Let Me Explain. So, welcome, Art.
Hey, thanks, you. We're talking about some of the best animated movies of all time. He gave me free range to pick whatever I wanted, and hopefully I have a good list that stands out.
You have some fun picks, that's all I gotta
Thank
say.
you, bro.
But before we get into your main list, before we narrow it down to just four picks as your favorite for animation, are there some films that, just escaped your list narrowly that some honorable mentions as well?
I don't think I put any Pixar movies on the list, surprisingly, right? I feel like those are some of the big ones that I know
Well, you
I
had one of
hold
the
near and dear to
directors.
my. I had one of the directors, right? Like I went the other way around. I tried to get him
Yeah.
from a different studio, but like even that director's made a bunch of good ones. Finding Nemo, Monsters Inc. Those are movies that are like the peak for me. Those are some of the best ones that I love. So anything from Pixar, Tangled. I really wanted to go Tangled, but then I figured I'd probably just be talking Tangled and nothing else. And I wanted to give a different variety, but those are probably classics that I very much enjoy. And then an old one would have been, I don't know if you've ever seen this one, Oliver and Company was an old classic Disney story about like these dogs who just live out on the streets. It's half musical. That was one that almost made the list, but I went with that special one that we'll be talking about later. But I like all those.
Yeah, some Disney, some Pixar, but I just teased it before. You got one of the directors on your list, and that is Brad Bird with his 1999 film, if I'm not
I
mistaken,
believe so.
The Iron Giant. So tell us about that. How does that one make it onto your
Oh,
list?
man. Back in the Blockbuster days, you used to be able to go and rent whatever you needed to, but it'd be on a VHS tape, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I used that VHS tape like crazy. If I'm not mistaken, at a certain point, you just got to buy the VHS tape, correct? So
Yeah.
no, this is a movie that's resonated with me for the longest time. It's my one of two, if I'm not mistaken, very deep into 2D animation picks that I have. And I think it's one that stands the test of time. I think a lot of technology that we use for animated movies has become very 3D centric, right? Toy Story
Yeah.
would be a movie that I love from Pixar. But no offense, you go back and you watch the first Toy Story, it's night and day when you're looking at Andy, and you're looking
Yeah.
at the toys because it develops so much. This looks just as beautiful as like the first day you saw it in the theater, the first day you saw it on a
Yeah.
VHS. I think the medium of 2D animation is something that's very timeless. I think the story within this, I think, is very powerful. And the more that I see it, like when you grow older, right, you're just fascinated by the story of a young kid who finds this giant robot and he's able to befriend it. And like the older you get, you start seeing the bureaucracy of it, all the ins and outs of the people who want to use this machine as a weapon more than a giant friendly person. But just seeing how it's been decades and yet it was like the most prolific thing in that trailer for Ready Player One, right? It feels like it's always appearing in different ways, from Space Jam, that it's now become like the Iron Giant is like Andre 3000. He doesn't come out with a sequel. He doesn't come out with his own little album, his own project. He's just a cameo. He's just a feature for everybody else to use. So, I mean, he's just an iconic piece of film, I think, because of what he represents, because of the movie, and because of how timeless the tale has been. And I feel one day we're going to get a remake of it. I'm hoping it's not live action, but in the future, without a doubt, it's not over. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's really something about this early adaptation of just using computer animation in a way that really works so well. And like you said, it doesn't stand out in the slightest. It just perfectly is in there, and it ages like fine wine.
Easily.
It's like really just gets better as you watch it and kind of get to reflect on it. And don't want to spoil the film, but it also has one of the like best endings to any film to me. I really love that. So great pick from here. It's the first time it does get mentioned on Four Favorites, so glad to have it represented here. Yeah, because I forgot about it even in my honorable mentions, and I've been ashamed since. But now that it's on here,
I got you.
I've been redeemed. Thank you so much. We've had a sad ending with The Iron Giant. We take on a more serious subject with the animated documentary from 2016 called Tower about the shooting in the 60s at the University of Texas in Austin. So tell us about Tower.
I remember around this time I had seen several documentaries that had done this type of style. Waltz to Bashir, I think, ended up not being a documentary, but it was like the way that you were able to tell a story through animation about like really close
Mhm.
events. And I was always fascinated with this movie because it told this whole real life story through like a rotoscope style.
Mhm.
And that's been something that's fascinated me throughout the last couple of years. Even last year, we had a movie called Flea. I don't know if you remember that documentary that was
Yeah.
able to
Mhm.
tell that story. It came out of Sundance through animation because they were refugees. And
Mhm.
I believe we have a couple this year as well. But Tower was one of the first that like really impacted me in being able to give you recreations of something without having to use real footage that wasn't available, which they do
Mhm.
cut to though. And I think that's what makes it so
Yeah.
powerful is that mix of the hybrid of it being real documentary footage of this campus where the shooting was happening, but then being able to recreate something not with actors so much, right? Because it can kind of seem
Mhm. Yeah.
corny or you're in this dramatic state. There's something about the animation and the way that they're able to like cut to different colors or different styles and make it like a negative and like it's a very detailed drawing of a person, but when they get shot, it just turns into like shapes. So you're not feeling the violence. And I think that was one of the most profound
Yeah.
ways of using animation as a medium to tell a documentary. It doesn't feel exploitative. It
Mhm. Yeah.
allows you to be able to get to the details and the tension of what was happening on that day and not necessarily keep you at a distance, but bring you really close without it feeling as gory as it was. I would highly
Yeah.
recommend checking out the trailer to this to get an idea of the way that they kind of showcase the violence in it, but I think it's a profound way to be able to retell a lot of incidents like this. And I'm looking forward to a lot of other ones that are doing. There's one I know that did it this year that's escaping me, and I thought they did a fantastic job. I like that it's even been used for a lot of narrative stuff. This year, Undone
Mhm.
was another series where they were
Yeah.
able to do rotoscope on Prime, and the beauty of that was that those actors never need to be together. And in the years of COVID, like that was a perfect way to shoot somebody here, shoot somebody over there,
Mhm.
and then putting them together in the scene. So perfect way to tell stories. And Tower, I think one that'll throw a lot of people back. So catch it if you can.
Yeah, I feel like in those head-on interviews that you get, it's basically just an extension of the people telling the story, which was also so great about Flea.
Yeah,
That really worked because it was them sharing and them telling, and then you got that intercut, not just with the dramatization of like, okay, let's showcase what
yeah.
happened, but it feels just like an extension. I feel like it helps it make it not exploitative overall.
Easily, because then you also don't want to pretend like it's all fictional and keeping it
Yep.
all animated. So that back and forth of it,
Mhm.
yeah. No, I highly recommend Tower. So, and I just
Yeah.
love that genre a lot. I hope it continues to grow because it's a
Mhm.
beautiful way to be able to tell a lot of these stories. So really good tech that we got. Oh, Apollo 10 and a half used it this year too. That's another one
It
that I
did,
know
yeah.
just got shortlisted with the Oscars
Mhm.
animation. So yeah, it
Yeah.
continues to show itself.
Big Linklater fan, so I'm rooting for that one. So
Beautiful.
obviously we already know the winner and whatever of the animated feature section, but for a nomination, I'm all up for it. Anyways, moving on from this animated documentary to a short film that you got on here. Actually, props to you and Zach bringing up a short film into the list. I really like that
You
for
got
a
to.
bit of representation. It's hard to narrow down because oftentimes there's this discussion to be had if animation is actually just is it a genre or is it a type of film? Do you really, because it's really hard to narrow down because you got all
Mhm.
different types of genre just merged together with animation. I feel like it's hard, but you made a place for a short film on your list called Late Afternoon from 2017. So yeah, tell us about that. Why did it make you cut?
Hopefully this is one that people can find because that the only worry of short films in general, live action, doc, or animated, they're so hard to find. And luckily
Yeah,
this year, I feel like with YouTube, with streaming. I'm not sure if you were able to find it in a specific place.
you can buy it on demand, I think, and then
Okay,
I've
so it's
even found
available.
it on YouTube somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember finding it on YouTube when this got nominated for the Oscars. It was part of the
Mhm.
Oscars for 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Could have been 2019,
Mhm.
and it just blew me away. The way that you're able to use animation as a way to get into the mind of a woman who's losing her memory, right? I thought that was
Mhm.
beautiful. You just brought up one of the best discussions when it comes to animation, right? Like animation isn't a genre, but we know that
Mhm.
like making it animated is like making it a documentary, right? Documentaries have the
Mhm.
same thing. A documentary
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's going to be a by the numbers. It could be a different perspective. We just talked about Tower. It could be a scary doc. It could be, different types of docs. An
Mhm.
animated movie can take you to so many places, which is why it feels like a genre that has its own genres within it, right? Um,
Exactly, yeah.
and what I love about Late Afternoon is that it showcases the power of animation. You
Mhm.
can't be as whimsical. You can't be as creative, unless you're starting to use VFX and live action. And that
Mhm.
costs more, right? When you're in an animated world, you're already in the physics of that world. And I think that this showcases it to the best degree. The live action version of this is the Julianne Moore movie. I don't know if you remember that, Still Alice, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That covers it in a way that's very serious, I feel, because it's live action.
Mhm.
This being animated allows this granddaughter to be able to like look at her grandma and just like be able to sift through different eras of her time. You can animate her looking younger and not have to worry about, I don't think the casting in that live action young person was okay, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
It fits perfectly because you're the one animating
Mhm.
them, you're the one casting them. And I think it's able to put you in her headspace in a way that when my fiance and I watched it, because we have relatives who have also gone through something very similar, it does a really good job at getting to the emotional aspect of what it feels like to be a person who doesn't know where they're at. Um,
Yeah.
so I found it to be very profound, and I think in the way that it's animated, it really helps resonate it. So if you have not caught Late Afternoon, hopefully it's still available on YouTube, and I implore people to catch it out.
Yeah, it's one of those that it's not just like, okay, let's do a film about dementia and have that at the center point, but it's so much just throwing you into it, but it's so gentle at doing that that it's has a lot of warmth for a disease that is so cold to
Yeah,
yourself and everyone around
that's a
you.
great way to put
And I
it.
feel like
Yes.
it beautifully captures that. It's got some nice animation to it as well. That like you said, in live action, I think it's also harder to buy into maybe
That.
certain dramatizations as well. You're one point removed from, I guess, our current reality, and it
Yeah.
just makes it easier to emotionally grab you. That's what Pixar is so great at, right? Or Brad Bird is so great at with the Iron Giant as well. And no, I don't have a tie over to your next film, which I just think is a great fun pick. It's a last second addition to it on here, and we're talking about Looney Tunes X NBA
Yes,
X Michael Jordan
sir.
in Space Jam from 1996. So yeah, Art, why do you love Space Jam?
Not the 2021 stuff. No, we're sticking to the
Yeah, no,
original
no, no way.
OG Space Jam. Look,
Mm-hmm.
I had to get one in there that's in the vein of this hybrid genre that I don't think we've ever had a
Mm-hmm.
bad one of, right? We can go back to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, probably the GOAT. I
Mm-hmm.
hope somebody gets that on your list, hopefully somewhere. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? This year we have Marcel the Shell. I will
Yeah.
almost hit you with Marcel the Shell because that ended up making
Mm-hmm.
also the shortlist for the Oscars. I love these types of stories, bro. Enchanted, another great one, a classic to add. But of course, if I'm going to come here to speak about it, I had to be the one to pick Space Jam. Oh
Uh-huh.
man, where do you even begin with a movie like this? I think you're able to take the iconography of some of the most classic cartoons and then the GOAT of all time when it comes to one of the biggest sports, and you
Mm-hmm.
have them clash together in a way that I think was not just of its time, right? A lot of people are
Mm-hmm.
worried. I think we struggle with that, especially today, in making a movie that of its time that is of its time period, but then we're worried that it's going to get stale. I think
Yeah.
Searching is a movie that understood, hey, everything on the screen, it's going to age really quick. Let's just make it of its time period. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
it's a movie that will last. Eighth Grade is
Yeah.
so of its time period. LeBron James, all the little things that happen, but it's because it
Mm-hmm.
dives into that it lives. A lot of
Yeah.
movies you catch and you're like, yeah, this kind of aged badly. It needs to understand its time period very well for it to be able to flourish later. Man, you can go back to this movie and there are so many elements of it that when you're an adult, hit way harder than when you were a kid, bro. I think this is a movie that fits for the whole family. I think the dynamics of
Mhm.
being able to have what we were just saying, a world that has physics and a
Mhm.
world where none of that matters, clashing with each other, just creates the looniest types of sequences. I think
Mhm.
you get some of
Yeah.
the funniest fourth wall breaks in this. I don't think Warner Bros. Has been funnier than they have with this and being able to make fun of themselves. I feel a lot of self studio humor. I think we've seen it in She-Hulk this year. We saw it in
Mhm.
the Space Jam one. I don't find it as funny
Yeah.
anymore because it feels like the corporate people are like
They know
signing
what
off
they're
on it.
doing.
They
Yeah,
know what
yeah,
they're
they
doing,
kind of yeah.
but like back in the day with like what Shrek did with Farquaad and that whole
Yeah.
behind the scenes, what they were doing here, this feels like they got away with something. So
Mhm.
it's because of it being a product of its time that I think allows it to be a time capsule and you go back to it and I mean there's a sequel to it and it doesn't live up to its legacy. Space Jam, one of the
Yeah.
best of all time.
Great way to put it. I don't have anything to add to Space Jam. It's just it's a fun ride to go on that I feel like everyone should at least once try it. Try it, and if you don't like it, well, try it again in 5 years. You'll grow to like it at some point.
Go see
It's like
Space
food you
Jam
will
Legacy
enjoy.
It'll have at least the Iron Giant in there, I guess.
You know, that's always kind of a thought that I kind of go back to as I get older. Then I feel like, okay, these old franchises, they get a sequel. How many people are actually introduced to the sequel before they see the original? And you know,
Mm.
how that changes your perception of a franchise. I really enjoyed your picks, Art. Thank you so much
Oh,
for
for
sharing
sure.
them. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to not miss more episodes of Full Favorites. We got those in the genre, theme, whatever of animation. We couldn't kind of pinpoint down what animation is. You can't really narrow it down that much. Art, where can people find more from you?
You can find me over at LME Explain on Twitter. I'm over on YouTube.com, over on Letterboxd, trying to finally catch up on all the stuff that's been throughout the year to log all of that in.
Mhm.
Or you can catch me over on Intercut every week where we talk about the latest and greatest and all of the new movies and stuff. But make sure you tune in here on the Quiet on Set podcast as they cover all of the
Thanks.
animated stuff, because I think you got a point there.
Yeah.
There is no way. It's boundless. In trying to figure out what animation is, I think you truly find it by not getting an answer. It's everything and everything all at once.
Yes, we even see a tie over with references like Ratatouille in Everything Everywhere All at
Yes,
Once.
sir.
Thank you so much, Art. Looking forward
Yes, sir.
to inviting you back for future
I got you.
topics as well. So thanks so much for sharing your list.